Welcome to the Drive Time preview for this week's game against the BYU Cougars. I'm Justin Strawn. I am one of the editors at ForHimCowbellTales.com. We're going to talk a little bit about the upcoming game that the Bulldogs have traveling to Provo, Utah on Friday. Late kickoff. I think the game's supposed to start at like 9:30, somewhere around there. 9:15. I don't know, somewhere in that range. Obviously, things aren't going well. Mississippi State got hammered by Auburn. That's probably putting it mildly, 38-14 on this past Saturday, and then they ended up, they were down 35-0 at the half. Just a terrible, awful, no good performance. I'm not sure what that book is of the same name, but it was Alligators, a horrible, no good, very bad day. That was Mississippi State on Saturday against the Auburn Tigers. A no good, very bad, horrible, very bad day. So, is there any hope for the Bulldogs as they travel to Provo this week? Yeah, there is. I know a lot of people have kind of written this team off, and probably rightfully so, but I'm giving them one more week to get it together. I want to hold out hope one more time that they can figure this thing out and they can get this ship righted. I don't know that they will, but I want to at least hope that they can. Now, when the Bulldogs are traveling to Provo, what are they going to need to do to keep BYU from manhandling them in Salt Lake City? Well, the main thing is, or Provo, excuse me, the main thing is they're going to need to take advantage of the one thing that BYU doesn't do well, and that's take care of the football. I know I think they've been picked off 10 times, if I'm not mistaken. If I remember looking at that correctly, they've thrown 10 interceptions on the year. I didn't see how many fumbles they've given up, but they turn the ball over. Now, Mississippi State, up until the Auburn game, had done a pretty good job of taking care of the football. That kind of fell apart on them there in the game against Auburn Tigers, but for the most part, they were taking care of the football. So, we'll see if they can continue that and if they can possibly force BYU into the turnovers. The one thing they're going to do is they're going to step their running back. I just cannot remember his name, and obviously, since I'm driving, I'm not about to try to look it up. But they've got a very talented running back who can pile up some yards, and they have a very balanced offense. Now, Taysom Hill is their starting quarterback. He's not great. He's okay. He's not great. And he completes about 60% of his passes. Like I said, they've got 10 interceptions. I don't know if he's thrown all of them, but the team itself has thrown 10 interceptions this year. So we'll see if the Bulldogs can take advantage of that. But they're a very balanced offense. They've run for 1,260 yards on the year, and they passed for 1,264. It's one or the other. Basically, they've run and passed for the exact same amount of yardage. So the Bulldogs are going to. I think that what they need to do is they need to focus on taking the run away. They need to get there and try to slow the talented running back down. If they can do that, then maybe they can force Taysom Hill into throwing some more interceptions, making some bad passes, making some bad reads, and putting the Cougars into a bad spot. Now, the Bulldogs, on the other hand, they've got to control their own turnovers, because that's one thing that BYU has done as well. I'm sorry, the BYU has 6 interceptions. I'm getting confused. BYU has 6 interceptions, but they've intercepted the ball 10 times themselves. That's what I'm getting confused about. It's very interesting. It's very feast or famine with BYU's defense. They haven't given up a ton of yards on the ground. I think it's just under 800 yards, like 760 or something like that on the ground. But they've given up over 1,600 through the air. They're giving up basically 280 yards a game through the air. They've given up nearly 70% completion percentages on their passes, but they do have 10 interceptions. So that's the one thing that you have to be careful for. That you can move the ball on them, and they seem to be an aggressive attacking secondary, but it ends up costing them in the long run. You can beat them through the air. Now, that's going to come down to Nick Fitzgerald, because I don't know that we're going to be able to run the ball on BYU. Like I said, they do a pretty decent job of stopping the run. I think they've given up like 110, 115 yards or something along those lines on 120 yards on the ground, if I remember correctly, per game. And giving up 120 yards per game is pretty good for a rush defense. But my question is, I remember watching their game against UCLA, and it wasn't a very enthralling game, to say the least, but they can possibly be a team where there's so much open to you in the passing game that you just don't run the ball very much. I'm not really sure that's because they are just stout in the front seven and they can lock down the run. It's just maybe the fact that there's just so much there on available to you through the passing game that the BYU Cougars have done a really. Nobody just tries to go at them on the ground because it's always the throw is always there for them. So I'll be interested to see how Dan Mullen and the Mississippi State offense decides to attack this defense, because basically they give up the same amount. I mean, they're 3-3. I mean, if you look at the statistics, they do basically the exact. I mean, they're even. They give up about 420 yards a game. They accumulate about 420 yards a game. I think they scored about the same amount of points on both sides of the football. I mean, it's a winnable game. I know a lot of people have, like I said, have given up any chance of the Bulldogs going to Provo, Utah, and winning this game, and I can understand it. But this game, it's a game that the Bulldogs can win, and it's about as much of a must-win as they get. A lot of people have jumped off the bandwagon. People are jumping ship on the Bulldogs left and right because of, first and foremost, the performance against South Alabama, but after the just inept performance that the Bulldogs had against Auburn, it's really hard to keep confident that the Bulldogs are going to be able to do much of anything from here on out. Now, if you beat BYU, then you start to get a little momentum back. They'll have to travel to Kentucky next week, play like at 6:30 in the evening, but you feel a lot more confident going to Kentucky. I mean, maybe you're confident already because the Mullen has always done so well against Kentucky, but you start to feel even more confident if State can pull off this win against BYU. If they can, then you're at 3-3. You got a good chance to get to 4-3 against Kentucky, and most likely 5-3 against Samford. And then if you can just find one win, maybe Texas A&M, who will be 2 weeks removed from a possible beatdown against Alabama, the one game that always sends them spiraling downward, maybe they can sneak one by them. Or maybe when Arkansas, who I just don't think is that great, I think that we're starting to see what they really are like. I think this is going to be very different Arkansas teams of the past, where they start off really well and then fade down the stretch. That game, you start to feel a lot more confident about. Alabama and Ole Miss at this point, obviously Alabama is far and away the best team in the SEC, possibly far and away the best team in the country. Then you got Ole Miss, who is probably going to just name their score because on our secondary. I mean, we can start the run on them, but I'm not sure how that secondary is going to be able to handle anything that Ole Miss does in the passing department. But all that goes away if you lose to BYU. None of it's there. You've got to figure out a way to get this game. This is going to be one of the most important coaching jobs, and unfortunately, we've said this a lot this year. This is going to be one of the most important coaching games that Mullen has had in his career. He's got to save any hope for the fans, because if we lose this game, end up losing to Kentucky, the homecoming game against Samford, the stadium will be doing good to be half full. Texas A&M, you'll probably have a few more there, but not a whole lot, because who wants to come see Mississippi State get their brains beat in by Texas A&M? And kind of the same thing for Arkansas. I mean, the difference between having a possibly decent season and salvaging what's left of it and just going into a tailspin and this season just turning into the dumpster fire that it is looking like it is going to be, that all starts and ends with this game against BYU. They can pull it out. I don't know that they will, but they can. This is going to be the last game that I predict Mississippi State to win outside of Samford if they don't. Right now, I'm going with a score of 31-28 for the Bulldogs. Like I said, I'm predicting them to win this one, but if they don't, then the only other game I can foresee myself predicting them to win will be that game against Samford. It's pretty critical. I mean, this team is so young, it needs to get to a bowl game because it needs those extra practices. We'd all hoped that this season would be a trampoline type season, where like it was in 2013, where it took us to greater things with a much more experienced team coming back. Now we're just trying to get through it with as little damage as possible. But anyway, that's kind of the way I see things. If Mississippi State can force some turnovers, get Taysom, shut down the run, play aggressive, which they haven't done defensively all year, and then take advantage of a secondary that sometimes likes to take a few too many chances and make some plays in the passing game, I really think that's going to be what gets the Bulldogs a victory. I don't say that with a whole lot of confidence, but I'm going to remain hopeful in the process. So, all right, like I said, this is Justin Strawn from ForWhomTheCowbellTolls.com. Appreciate you joining me on this drive time preview. And hopefully next time we talk to you, we'll be talking about Mississippi State trying to get back over, getting over 500 for the first time against Kentucky. So until then, L State.